Alright, we have an Al-Haitham Rerun incoming alongside the Chlorinde banner, and naturally the big question is, should you get him? Of course, at the present moment, one needs to consider that Al-Haitham is one of the top 3 DPS characters in the game, apparently, alongside Arlecchino and Neuvillette. So, in that sense, one would think that as someone who does have Al-Haitham, I would actually recommend him. Thing is, I kind of don't. Let me explain. We're here with Al-Haitham and Arsenori. Alright, so the main reason why I don't really ever recommend Al-Haitham in any meaningful capacity is because ultimately his playstyle is very similar to just playing, I guess, on-field Nahida. And yeah, you will end up doing more DPS with Al-Haitham than with on-field Nahida, especially because you can also play off-field Nahida with Al-Haitham. But consider the following. If you have limited Primogems, would you rather have Al-Haitham, who is an on-field only character, or would you rather have Nahida, who can do everything that Al-Haitham can do, plus off-field shenanigans? It's kind of why Nahida is power creep everyone. But either way, this is not a criticism that I extend to the other Dendro DPS in the game, being Tignari, because Tignari's playstyle is very unique. There's really only at the present moment one character that kind of plays like Tignari, and that's C6 Ganyu, so not really worth considering at that point. So yeah, Tignari being another Dendro DPS character, I think is both very strong and quite unique in his gameplay, whereas Al-Haitham is a very strong DPS character in the Dendro world, but is very similar to just playing an on-field Nahida, or hell, even an on-field Baiju at this point. But either way, we have a team like this, which is usually the team that I play with Al-Haitham anyway. It's probably also his best team, question mark? I don't really know. But we are running Shinobu, which means we don't really get to use a newer character, but I'll talk about newer characters in a sec. Suffice to say, this is a team that does a lot of damage. First, we have Nahida's off-field Dendro. Also, keep in mind I have C2 Nahida, so of course it's going to be even a harder hitting team than most other teams. We have a lot of green numbers going on. It's unclear whose is Al-Haitham's and whose is Nahida's. But yeah, that's kind of how we normally play Al-Haitham, usually dropping his ult so that we get these 3 chiseled light mirrors. And then of course, since his last rerun, we had the introduction of Fontaine characters. Of course, there's really only one Fontaine character worth discussing with regards to Al-Haitham, that is, of course, Lady Furina. And of course, with Furina, we find ourselves having to alter the team a little bit. Not too much, but a little bit. Shinobu, of course, is not going to be a strong enough healer for a Furina team. Baiju is, though. And so we can play a team that is kind of like this. Like so. Is this team necessarily stronger than the previous team? You decide, but of course, you could use... well, you don't use Nahida in this team, really. So you could put Nahida on the other side, and that could be very, very helpful. Of course, when it comes to using Al-Haitham with Nahida, obviously you don't have to use Nahida. You could obviously bring Yao Yao or DMC even. And of course, in a team like the Furina team, you don't necessarily have to use Baiju. You can, of course, try and play Yao Yao. Just make sure to pop her ult in order to get that team healing that Furina likes. But either way, that would be the idea. Real quick, when it comes to playing Al-Haitham, the goal is to maintain your mirror stacks as long as you can, really. So what I tend to do is start off by setting up the rest of the team, be it Nahida, Yalan, Shinobu, for example. Set them up. Then ult. That way, when you start ulting, you will... well, after you ult, you'll have your 3 mirror stacks. Then normal attack spam until you see one of your mirror stacks disappear. Do a charge attack in order to get another mirror stack. That way you're back on 3 mirror stacks for a while. Then continue normal attack spamming, and then use your skill. And you will have another mirror stack and then continue going. Generally speaking, though, in my experience, you don't really actually need to use the skill either. Because by the time you reach that point where, oh yeah, it's time to use his skill, your off-field damage and your buffs have probably worn off, and at that point it's probably a better idea to start rotating and setting up your team once again. There are, of course, Al-Haitham Sweatlords out there who would actually do the thing of using his ult, swapping over to someone like Shinobu or hell, Fischl, using their skill and then swapping back to Al-Haitham in the time it takes for his ult to be activated. Thing is, I would do that, except I have 200 ping at least. And so it's kind of impossible for me to do it. If I screw it up, I would find myself with an Al-Haitham that has no stacks. And then I have to use his skill, which kind of negates the whole purpose of using his ult in that particular point in time. So, yeah, sack that. That's not going to be how I ever play Al-Haitham. Of course, if you're going up against a flying enemy, you could actually consider not using his ult first. You could consider using his skill first against, let's say, a flying shroom. Use a skill, aim at the flying shroom, knock him out of the sky, and then use your normal attacks, use your charge attack, or you won't actually be able to use your charge attack because when you use the hold skill and you're in the air, you will probably end up doing a plunging attack in order to get your third light mirror stack. And so at that point, it's really just kind of normal attack spamming until you run out of mirror stacks. That's a little bit odd. Personally, I don't ever do that myself. So yeah, I don't really play Al-Haitham all that much these days. For context, I play Senno and Tignari significantly more. And yet, the general consensus is that Al-Haitham's damage and Al-Haitham's teams tend to be more damage than Senno teams and Tignari teams, but despite all of that, I actually do enjoy playing Tignari and Senno's teams just a lot more. So it just is what it is, you know? But if you're really, really into getting Al-Haitham, because let's be real here, he's hot, plus he also has an incredible mind that, need I remind you, outplayed the sages of the academia, then, okay, let's talk about how you build him. Let's start off with Al-Haitham's weapons. So, pretty much every DPS sword, as far as I can tell, works on Al-Haitham, but we're going to really just highlight a few so that this video isn't 3 hours long. Obviously, Lo-Fire, aka Light or Folio Incision, is his best in slot. It is, of course, his signature weapon, so it is what it is. Haran Gepakufutsu is the sword that I use. Not necessarily my first choice, but it is the 5-star weapon that was thrusted upon me when I was trying to get another Kagura's. So it is what it is. There's a new Battle Pass weapon that came with Fontaine called Wolf Fang. It is really, really good on him. So if you don't have a 5-star weapon and you are a Battle Pass user, this would probably be the sword for you. The Umbrella and Iron Sting are pretty decent. Apparently they're very similar in their strength, so feel free to go for that if you want. There's also Harbinger of Dawn. It's a 3-star sword. And my general rule is don't use 3-star weapons on 5-star characters because it's wrong. Look, Harbinger of Dawn is good if you can maintain the passive. Good luck if doing that because he is an on-fielder. If you bring a shield, then you should be okay. But using a 3-star weapon on a 5-star character is so cringe. I'd say don't do it, but if you're desperate, then okay, fine, do it, right? When it comes to artifacts, okay, I've been sticking with Gilded Dreams. It seems to be probably his overall best in slot. But I haven't really bothered farming anything new for him in particular. That being said though, if you're playing him with Furina, then of course Marashose Hunter is an option. And it's probably a better one. If you're playing him in some sort of solo Dendro Al-Haitham meme, okay, have fun with that. But at that point, you probably want to put him on Deepwood Memories, obviously. But if you're feeling particularly crazy and you want to play him in, like, I don't know, some sort of Forward Fate Furina burning team, let's say, there is the Unfinished Reverie, which is a burning set, whereby he effectively gets 50% additional damage, almost guaranteed if you can maintain the burning, which, well, he's a Dendro character, so as long as you have some pyro, it's usually pretty easy to maintain that burning. I will probably talk about Unfinished Reverie in some detail at some point, but mainly in the context of using it with the higher, as opposed to someone like Al-Haitham. Alright. And for the artifacts themselves, generally speaking, it's EM Dendro Crit. If you happen to have a particularly good attack sand and, like, no good or even decent EM sands, then yeah, sure, use that. But yeah, look, his abilities scale actually off both attack and EM, but he is a Dendro character, and Dendro reactions tend to lean more towards EM, so keep that in mind. He does do a lot of Dendro reactions, I believe, especially when you have full mirror stacks. You should be getting quite a handful of reactions going on there. As a direct result of that, EM tends to be a lot better. And finally, let's talk about Al-Haitham's Constellations. Okay, here's the thing. I'm pretty sure the general consensus with Al-Haitham's Constellations is still that they're not particularly fantastic. Obviously, I won't be going for them, but if you are going to go for them, alright, let's just have a quick look. And of course, unlike Yai Miko, I don't have any first-hand experience with, well, any of Al-Haitham's Constellations, so this is kind of a guess, but, you know, when you read them and you have a somewhat decent understanding of the game, it should be relatively apparent that C1 isn't necessary, in my opinion. Because when I play Al-Haitham, I tend to alternate between using his ult and using his skill, which generally is more than enough time for his skill to, or skill cooldown to refresh. And even with 111 ER, because I tend to play double Dendro teams, I don't really find him running out of energy when I need to ult. So that's not really a problem either. So at that point, C1 seems really, really pointless to me. Then there's C2, which is effectively 200 EM. That's actually what it is. Which, for a C2, seems really, really underwhelming. My Nahida almost does that already, so like, probably not worth it in the end. Compare that to especially newer character C2s that are like pretty busted in some meaningful capacity. Al-Haitham's is just 200 EM, wow. C4 is somehow both a buff and damage for himself and a buff and damage for his team, especially in the EM department. It's nice, but like all C4s, it's often just kind of whatever. And then with C6, okay, at least Al-Haitham's C6 can sort of be an interesting change up in the way he plays, because at that point you can actually just start with a skill first and not really have to worry about it. It doesn't really matter how many mirror stacks he has when he uses his ult, he will always end up with 3 mirror stacks. And on top of that, you can try and overcap his mirror stacks, and in doing so, you end up getting a big crit bonus, which is probably really, really nice. Thing is, this is C6 Al-Haitham we're talking about. There's, with the exception of events, at like the current event being the big Flower and Vishap event, there's nothing on the planet that can survive long enough for you to actually need the extension in duration of his mirror stacks, number one, but also the gigantic increase in crit value for just his damage in general, number two. But then on top of that, the extension on his mirror stacks probably tends to make them significantly too long for like buffs to exist. And even at the present moment, I find that I don't really need to extend his mirror stacks with his skill, because his off-field shenanigans have already run out at that point. I need to start sorting out the rest of the team again. So, yeah. Is it necessary? Well, C6 5-stars tend to not be necessary in this game. But at the same time, it might not even be all that useful in single-player gameplay. So yeah, look, I definitely won't be bothering to get his Constellations. And I kinda don't really recommend getting him now. Of course, if you want to get him, but that's just my general feel. He's not really a character that I would be like, oh my god, yes, you should totally get him, you should totally get him, you should totally get him. You could get him. Or you could save for the Nahida rerun that's definitely coming again, maybe in about half a year. Or a little bit later than that. There's also a Furina rerun incoming as well, so I mean, do you really want to get Al-Haitham or do you want to get Furina? Oh, and even before then, Chlorinde. Hello? I think Chlorinde looks significantly more interesting to play than Al-Haitham. That's just me. Anyway, let me know what all of this in the comments below. How do you feel about Al-Haitham? Let me know in the comments. Is he someone that you would highly recommend specifically because he does a lot of damage? Or are you kind of like me and just being like, yeah, he does a lot of damage, but he's not terribly interesting. Like, he's not boring, but it's not terribly interesting in my opinion. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. If you liked this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Genshin Impact action. Until next time, I will see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Now that's more like it. With the fall of darkness, destruction shall rise.
Make yourselves at home.
Flash, have a taste of courage.
Process of elimination.
Is it my turn now? Not bad. You've proven to be a worthy opponent after all. Quiver! Countless has been seared away.
Our bond is
My
strong.
blade is all that
Flash.
remains. No turning back!
I'll settle this. Grow, grow, grow.